All right. So, a little bit different location than normal. I've got a tree with a stick leaned up against it as a tripod. Normally have quite unique tripods. Don't actually ever bring anything besides my phone up until this point to film videos. So, if you know me or any of the content that I have made and posted where this is placed, my name is Evan Strong, and I primarily make videos geared around the lacing of our shoes, the tying of our shoes, and the things within the clothing that we wear in modern 2024. Today's the 10th of September, 2024, and how those things alter the natural workings and mechanics of our human bodies. We are universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. And there's only one way that the body works. Each part of the body only has its one function. The shoulders, the hips, the ankles, things like that have multiple positions they work in, but they only work in those positions the way they work. And we can't tell them how to do what they are designed to do. So, my prerequisites, because I always focus on the clothing and how that has effect on our bodies. I never give exercises. In fact, I say the opposite. I say that we should not have to stretch. We should not have to be exercising for the sake of getting exercise, and our bodies just work and function if they're not being restricted. So, prerequisites of mine, as I always state, are lacing the shoes that you currently have with my technique, which is in my content in many places. It's not because it's my technique that you need to do it, but it's because it allows the shoe that you have, whatever it is, to fit like a glove would for the hand, allowing all the functionality to still be there while still wearing a shoe. In addition to that, tying your shoes evenly over toward the inside, just to allow for even internal rotation. And then removing the tags from everything, stemming at the tongues of your shoes up through the entirety of all of your clothing. So those are my prerequisites, just to allow the body to have a chance to just function the way that it's designed to function and would without all this modern day designed clothing that restricts it. So I've gone over time and time again internal rotation, and I say to follow the thumbs into internal rotation and external rotation. Most people, as I've mentioned often, in 2024 are in a constant chronic until fixed state of external rotation, which is only half of your body's rotation. And in order to get centered, our natural center line as a human, the nose, the sternum, and the spine are the three things that I normally mention being the center of the body. You have to get internal, or else you're nowhere near your center line and your core can't activate. So I have these two logs. We'll see if I need to step back a little bit once I get to them. I'm going to show a position within a farmer's carry. I'm going to use a farmer's carry as the example of the natural positioning that comes with internal rotation. As I talk about the scapulas or your shoulder blades, with internal rotation, they're then allowed to wrap as they naturally would up and out of the way around your rib cage to be able to breathe in 360-degree expansion of the rib cage, right? And all the things within clothing that I have shown within the content I've already posted, tens of hours of content free, just little modifications we can make within our clothing, those things that are there in modern design clothing are inhibiting our ability to just have our natural functions as human beings. So I'm gonna walk over here. The only reason I haven't been there yet is just so you can hear me a little bit better, but I'm gonna walk over here because I have these two logs. I don't bring anything with me because, again, ideally we just function out of our body's natural function. And we shouldn't have to have accessories to allow our bodies to do its thing. So, like workouts, you shouldn't have to go to the gym to lift just a cast iron piece of metal just to allow your body to work naturally. It should just work if it's not restricted within our own personal situations and capabilities. So, I have these two logs, similar weights, they're different sizes, but the only reason I have them is for a visual, for an example. Because when I talk about internal rotation and how it's very, very natural, and we would be that way naturally, to be on the outsides of the feet with the toes very slightly pointed in and the pelvis posteriorly tucked, or at least able to get there, right? So this is why I always mention the shoulder seams have to sit just, when I say have to, I mean universal human design. They have to allow the natural body to do its natural thing. Shoulder seams have to sit at the edges of the shoulders, not farther out, or at least not very much, if a slight bit. And the top ones have to be behind the shoulders. Pants have to be above the hips to allow them to just open and have their natural function. And the front of the waistband has to be at least even with the rear, if not slightly higher in the front than in the rear, just to allow the body to work and open into internal rotation and reach and have mobility. And ideally there's no heel on your shoe at all. Ideally completely flat shoes, because as I say, natural is how the body is until we add things to it. And naturally our feet would be sitting flat on the earth, whatever we're standing on, right? So a heel is altering everything up your entire body. So when it comes to just a natural movement, the reason I'm using a farmer's carry as an example is because if you're lifting anything in life, you're gonna want to lift it out of, as best as you can, your center line. Otherwise, you're causing a twist and an imbalance within your body. Your pelvis will twist, which are your hips. Your spine will then twist. Your feet will have weights on them on different sides, the outside of this one versus the inside of this one, or vice versa. Your neck will twist, your shoulders will twist if you're carrying things off to the side, which isn't always a bad thing to do in certain cases if done still active and centered where you can be. But a farmer's carry gives a very good visual of even weight, even rotations, and even lift, so that you can see what it looks like to carry a weight in an active, centered, even internal rotated position that we would naturally be in. As I say, that's why I use my body as an example in these videos, because I've allowed it to get to a natural position, the way that our bodies would be through the clothing. Okay, so stick around. At the end, I'm going to be talking about, I will be designing minimal 100% natural material clothing just to allow the body to function for myself and everybody else who gets the opportunity or decides to purchase it. I'll talk about that. But when we're going to pick up something, because it's very common in life to have to carry things, right? If you have children and they're crawling and you need them to get over here to feed them, you pick up the child and you bring him over here. It's not about exercises and weightlifting, but if there's ever anything in life that you have to pick up, it's not something we would have to even think about, but because of modern 2024 and the positionings that our bodies are in, because of primarily the modern clothing that's just not designed how the body operates, we almost have to relearn what it means to be natural. And that's a unique thing for this time period. But anyway, if I'm going to pick up these logs, again, doing the prerequisites within the clothing to just allow the body to be in its position already, then you're going to be in internal rotation. And I've shown what it looks like to just naturally bend over and hip and hinge at the hips. Now, when you pick up the logs, it shouldn't be a conscious thing, but being in a naturally open internal position, your shoulders will be in a position where all the muscles are working as one. We shouldn't be talking about the body as if you need to lift with this certain part of the body or that certain part of the body. The body should work as an entire whole in everything that we do, because it's all connected and it's all taking part in any motion that any part of it's doing. So when it comes to lifting something like this, naturally you would be open, you would be internal as far as the rotation within the femurs, down through the legs, into the feet, on the arches, and in the arms. Internal rotation, opening the rib cage, so when you bend down, you're just open. And everything's in a neutral position, staying centered. So you'll bend down, keep things normal. Don't be conscious about trying to hold them into what you would think is normal, but just as if the body's all doing one motion. The thing with these logs is they're different lengths, and you have to balance them forward and back also. So when you're holding something, in a lot of fitness communities, they'll talk about keeping your shoulders retracted and in a certain position. Really, it's keep yourself in a neutral, normal, working human function position, universally designed human position. But that's what they're trying to explain when they say that, just coming from a place of wearing clothing that doesn't quite allow that to happen. So if you look at my scapulas, I'm internal, right? But if you just focus on trying to get one part of your body to stay in internal rotation, such as your shoulders, well, if your feet aren't doing that, and your femurs aren't doing that, and your pelvis is not posteriorly tucking to allow all that to happen from the center, then if you're trying to focus on your shoulders doing something specific, you're now focusing on trying to be imbalanced because the rest of your lower body isn't doing something in conjunction with what you're trying to tell your upper body to do. So staying open then allows everything to just stay in that neutral center line. And I can just stand on one foot with even weight on both sides because my center line is still the same. It doesn't change the way my body operates because I'm lifting weight. Because ideally, yeah, we just stay in that centered line that we have. Your sternum doesn't move left to right. Your nose, unless your head's moving left to right, doesn't move left to right outside of your center line. You just have a way that you will operate without being altered through clothing, right? So I'm gonna walk away from the camera. I'll turn around and walk toward the camera as if I were just to be walking, but I have weight kind of reinforcing is really all it's doing the natural activated position my body would be in and we all would be in naturally within our own situation. So I'll just walk directly away from the camera and turn around and walk toward it. Right? So again, staying naturally on the outsides of the feet. My body is just activated and activating through the motion evenly just to allow it to happen. And you can see, even bending down underneath that tree there, you should not have very much activation happening in the front of your body. In the anterior part of your body, which is the front of your body. Because in the rear, as where my shoulders are going, again, naturally, I'm not conscious of it, but just a position they would just naturally sit in, internal rotation, it puts the activation in the rear of your body. Your calves, your hamstrings, your glutes, any muscle and every muscle that retracts your shoulders, and it all works together as one. So even when I walk underneath those little branches hanging down from that angled tree right there, there shouldn't be that much change within where the activation is from the rear to the front. In other words, my quads, the front of my legs, there's another word for them if people don't know the word quad. But yeah, anyway, this the front of your leg, you shouldn't have that much activation, at least being like transferred from the rear to there. what will happen is it will start to get recruited a little bit more because of the depth of the bend within how you're going to be positioned underneath that. But you should still feel the majority of the activation in the rear, the hamstrings and the glutes. So watch again as I walk under there, because if the activation changes to being mostly in the front of the body, in those quads, what will happen is your arches will then collapse. And if your arches collapse, your shoulders will come forward. Did you notice how I had a harder time speaking as that happened? Because then it takes you from an open position, outsides of the feet, and then everything else I described, to if my arches collapse, you're using entirely different muscles. The sound that's coming out of my voice, that was genuine, because it closes you off all over your entire body. So a natural openness. So I'll walk one more time, and you can watch as I go under. The way that everything kind of, again, hinges at the hips, stays open. The knees kind of come out a little bit because that reinforces being able to stay posteriorly tucked with the pelvis and being on the outsides of the feet. And the shoulders, same thing, they just stay open to allow your rib cage to expand. Because if your arms were to come in following your collapsed arches in an incorrect position, now your rib cage can't expand because your arms are in the way. Staying on those arches where you would naturally be then keeps those arms out, but in a just kind of a neutral out to where there's space, see, between my arms and my rib cage to just breathe through the entire motion. So here we go. I'll just walk away from the camera, walk underneath the branch, turn around and come back. Just watch the positioning of my body and how it doesn't really change even though I'm kind of bending down. The hinge happens, but the position stays just about the same. All right. And if you also notice, if I were to be training this kind of motion in a gym, I'd probably be on a completely flat mat or maybe like fake grass, astroturf type stuff. And out here, I'm actually right next to a river. You might be able to hear the water. I'm in sand. So it reinforces just a natural movement because you have to use natural stabilizing muscles to just navigate the sand. And the discrepancy in height as you're going back and forth. And so you're actually training the body, not that we're training, but that's what I'm getting at, is it's a natural thing. The body naturally works very well because in a natural environment, so many stabilizing muscles are just being used because it's required on an uneven surface. But in modern 2024, when we're walking around on concrete and asphalt, tile, even carpet to a degree, hardwood flooring, these kind of things are just so unnaturally flat to where our bodies aren't designed to work on something like that without having things that we can actually adapt to. Because the body's amazing at adapting, but it needs to just be in nature to be able to do that, right? So that's a natural movement that I have shown adding a little bit of weight to the body. So the point is, it's not so much about form. It's because you don't want to be conscious, because then you're kind of almost intellectually telling your body what to do rather than it doing what it's designed to. So it's not about practicing something or working up to something, but this gives a visual of when your body, as mine now is in a naturally functioning working position going throughout just the entirety of the time it has on the earth. This is how these things would naturally happen for all humans within our own situations and capabilities. Until, again, modern day things, mostly what I talk about being the clothing that's placed directly on them, is affecting them. Okay, so yeah, there's your visual of just like a natural way that humans would be carrying weight. So I've got tens of hours of content, dialogue like this, just me speaking through videos, explaining the natural functions of the human body and the correlations that modern day clothing has with that, and how they negatively affect our body's natural workings. So I show a lot of little tweaks that you can do within the clothing you already have with nothing but a pair of scissors. And I will be designing clothing, as I was mentioning, minimal clothing made out of 100% natural materials, just to allow our body to work. I mentioned a little bit over there about the top seams of the shoulders needing to sit behind the shoulders to allow them to lift and just have them be out of the way for that motion to happen. And the shoulders on the edges of the seams on the edges of your shoulders should not go farther. Ideally, they should be at the very top of your shoulder to allow motion to the side. So things like that within clothing, keeping the pants up off of the hips. These are the things I will incorporate into my designs when I design clothing. So you can trust that, to the best of my ability, I will be designing clothing with the sole intention to just allow the body to function, with all the understanding and knowledge that I have about the natural workings of the universally designed human body. So stick around for that, the clothing when it comes. I'm very excited for it for my personal use. I need clothing that works for my body just as anybody else does also. So yes, I'm excited for that. Stick around. If you do ever purchase my clothing, please purchase it in a size that fits you. Do not purchase it oversized to fit fashionably, because that is the entire reason I'm designing it, is to fit where it needs to allow natural movement. Okay, so again, my name is Evan Strong. Here's a little visual and a little bit of explanation about the natural workings of the human body carrying a load, carrying weight in a farmer's carry in this case. Okay, thank you. A farmer's carry is just the name of that movement, if it's probably good to say. Okay, thank you.